I draped my own cloak over my stepsister's bare shoulders to save her from public disgrace. She smiled and thanked me through her tears. That same night, her servant stripped me naked and threw me into a beggar's den on the edge of the capital. "You meddlesome wretch," she hissed as they dragged me away. "If it weren't for you, I'd be crown princess by now. You're so virtuous, why don't you warm these poor souls with your own body?" I died on a guard's blade with their hands still on me. But heaven, for once, showed mercy. When I opened my eyes again, I was back. Back to the very morning that cursed banquet began. Back to the day a wild cat would tear my stepsister's gown to shreds. Back to the moment that would unravel my life. This time, I wasn't going to lift a finger to save her. This time, the wicked would pay in blood. Let me tell you how I died the first time. The flower viewing banquet had ended like a dream. My stepsister Rosalie had smiled at me, thanked me with tears in her eyes, squeezed my hand as I draped my outer robe across her bare shoulders, hiding her shame from the male guests across the courtyard. I had walked back to the Choi family mansion thinking, for the first time in my life, that maybe she truly saw me as her sister. I was a fool. That night, right after supper, an unbearable heat surged through my body. Before I could even cry out, Rosalie's servants burst into my chambers. They stripped me naked. They bound my wrists. They threw a hemp sack over my head and tossed me into the back of a cart like livestock. When the sack came off, I was lying in the rotting straw of a beggar's den on the outskirts of the capital. Filthy hands were already reaching for me. The stench made me retch. I tried to pierce my arm with the hairpin I had hidden in my hair, just to stay conscious, just to remember. Rosalie gasped from the doorway, covering her mouth in mock horror. "Look, my dears, my kind-hearted sister is harming herself. Quickly, someone sever her tendons. How else will she bring warmth to these poor wretched souls?" I begged, I sobbed. I asked her what I had done. She crouched down and ground her embroidered slipper into my bloodied palm. "You meddlesome wretch, who asked you to give me that robe? If not for you, I'd be crown princess by now." Through the pain, I tried to reason with her. I remember my voice cracking. In our dynasty, a woman's virtue outweighs heaven itself. "Sister, had His Highness not arrived in time, what would you have done?" A noble maiden exposing her skin in public, though not illegal, would be seen as compromised. What respectable gentleman would ever seek your hand after such disgrace? Your fate would be sealed. Either a silken noose around your neck, or a lifetime locked in a nunnery, stripped of all dignity. I truly meant it for your own good." She froze. For one heartbeat, I thought I had reached her. Then her face contorted, and she laughed in my face. "Stop pretending. Handing me that robe, you were just vying for the crown prince's attention, weren't you, you trash? Just like Valentina. The crown prince and I grew up together. He would never humiliate me in public. The kind-hearted crown prince will make me his consort eventually. That vile Valentini is my real assailant. He'd never take her as his principal wife." The absurdity of it nearly made me laugh. "If the crown prince truly cared for you," I whispered through bloody teeth, "why would he avoid you like the plague after your father's dismissal? Why would he let the noble women slander you? Why would he be making rushed promises to Valentina even now?" Her eyes went black with hatred. "Dear sister," I rasped, "since you're so kind-hearted, why don't you warm these poor beggars with your own body?" Regret burned through me like acid as I watched the beggars swarm closer. I made one last decision. I lunged at the nearest guard and threw my own body onto his blade. Death came mercifully fast. I never thought heaven would give me a second chance. But it did. And this time, I would use every breath of it to make her pay. Alicia, when I say fetch flowers, you fetch them. One more word and I'll dig up your mother's grave myself. Rosalie's venomous voice snapped me out of my daze. The instant I heard it, I knew I'd been reborn. I was kneeling beneath the lattice of the Grand Princess's pavilion, hands frozen mid-air over the silk fan I'd been folding. Across the courtyard, the 9-colored sacred lotus shimmered in the late morning light. A tribute from a foreign kingdom, gifted to the imperial princess herself. Every noblewoman in the capital had been invited to admire it. From across the lake, from a respectful distance. But not Rosalie's. You see, my stepmother had once been a flower girl on the streets, forced into concubinage after my father took her by force. The man's fleeting pleasure soon turned to neglect when she fell gravely ill. Not even a bowl of medicine could be begged for her, and she soon faded like a dying flower. Though I bore the title of second young miss of the minister's household, I might as well have been Rosalie's maidservant. That's why in my past life, she had dared to strip me naked and throw me into a beggar's den without hesitation. That's why, even now, she felt entitled to threaten my mother's grave. In my last life, I had been the obedient little sister, the bastard daughter who knew her place, the girl who dared not refuse. I had crossed the bridge, gathered the sacred lotus into my own arms, and carried it back to her like a servant carrying her master's tea. Not this time. I suppressed my hatred and feigned innocent surprise. A renowned beauty is best admired from afar, sister. Why must you insist on plucking this particular flower? Unless there's something special about it. Rosalie's face went white in an instant. What nonsense are you spouting? I'm just curious. I wanted to take a closer look. I am your legitimate elder sister, she snapped, her voice climbing too loud too fast. When I tell you to fetch it, you fetch it. One more word and I'll end you right here. She shoved me forward. I straightened my spine and turned to face the assembled noblewomen my voice carrying just loud enough. Sister, the 9-colored sacred lotus was a tribute to Her Highness, the Princess. That she permits us to admire it in her garden is grace enough. How could we possibly presume to touch it? A hush fell over the pavilion. I had said it sweetly, softly, like a maiden too gentle to know any better. But the words landed like a slap. Rosalie's face went from white to crimson. From the cushioned benches across the way, the whispers began. Weren't we all invited as guests? One noblewoman murmured behind her fan. Since when does Lady Rosalie get to commandeer the flowers, just because she fancies them? Oh, please, another sneered. It's only because her father's a minister. Wait, silly me. She won't even have that ministerial father much longer, will she? The corner of my mouth lifted. Such a fool, my stepsister. So desperate to seduce the crown prince before her family's collapse reduced her to nothing. Every eye in the garden drifted, almost in unison, toward the woman seated beneath the central pavilion. Valentina. Daughter of the Marquis of Yongning. The Empress Dowager's favorite, the Grand Princess's protégée. A military dynasty's golden child, cradling her beloved tabby cat in her arms like a queen on a throne. With the crown princess selection only weeks away, the entire empire was holding its breath. My father, the Minister of Works, sat under house arrest, accused of embezzling flood relief funds from the Tanjo disaster. Valentina, meanwhile, had been summoned to the Empress Dowager's chambers 3 times in a single month. The rumor mill said the imperial decree already bore her name in vermilion ink. The selection itself was a formality. Rosalie knew it, and she was desperate. That was why she wanted those flowers. Because she wasn't admiring them. She was weaponizing them. I understood her game now. The herbs hidden in her perfumed sachet, ninefold nettle, a beast-maddening compound, reacted violently with the lotus's heavy perfume. The combined scent would drive Valentina's pampered cat into a savage frenzy. In my last life, the cat had lunged. Rosalie's gauzy outer robe had torn away in a single swipe. Half naked before the entire court, she had locked eyes with the crown prince across the courtyard and played the part of the wronged maiden to perfection. He had rushed to her rescue. The kingdom had whispered of his gallantry for weeks. And I, the meddling little sister, had ruined it. By draping my own robe over her shoulders before he could. That single act of kindness was the reason she had me killed. Not this time. Rosalie's panic was already cracking through her composure. She glared at me, then at the lotus, then back at me. She knew she was losing time. Useless, she hissed under her breath. Then she stormed across the bridge alone, her cheeks burning, the eyes of every noble woman tracking her with quiet disgust. She seized the entire pot of 9 colored lotuses in her arms, drowning herself in their perfume, and began the long walk back. I drifted casually toward the central pavilion, toward Valentina. The tabby cat in her arms arched its back, its ears flattened, its tail bristled. But without the ninefold nettle to send it into a frenzy, it merely hissed once and held its ground. Valentina's brow furrowed. She turned to look at me. I dropped my head and hurried away before she could speak. Rosalie was so consumed by her own performance that she never noticed. She set the flower pot down at her side and lifted her chin in triumph, awaiting her spectacle. She caught my eye and her glare turned impatient. You can't even carry a flower pot properly. Disgraceful. Birds of a feather flock together, sneered a voice from behind us. All equally worthless. Marina, Valentina's closest friend. Daughter of the Deputy Minister of Works, and very likely the next Minister of Works, if my father swung from the gallows. Move those flowers any closer, Lady Rosalie, Marina warned, and you'll be carried out feet first. If my father is convicted of embezzlement that worsened the Tanjo floods and killed thousands, Marina's father will take his position. Who would have thought the young would die before the old? Isn't this the cruelest reversal of nature's order? I almost smiled at the irony. Rosalie trembled with humiliated rage. But when she lifted the flower pot a second time, that arrogant smile crept back across her face. Run your mouth all you want, she hissed at Marina. When I become crown princess, my father will be safe. And as for you, sister dear, she shot me a venomous glance. I'll make you wish you'd never been born. The cat lunged. It happened just as it had in my past life. A blur of orange fur, a feral shriek, claws raking flesh. Rosalie screamed and threw up her arms to shield her face. The cat shredded her gauzy outer robe to ribbons in seconds, drawing thin lines of blood across her collarbones. What she didn't see, what she was too busy shielding her face to see, was Marina stepping casually onto the hem of her skirt as she stumbled backward. The fabric ripped. The skirt slid down. And Rosalie, proud, scheming, calculating Rosalie, collapsed onto the cold marble of the Grand Princess's pavilion, sprawled naked in front of half the court. In my past life, I had thrown myself forward. I had shoved Marina aside, torn off my own outer robe, and covered her in a heartbeat. Her honor had been saved. This time, I stood perfectly still. The other noble women, who had loathed her arrogance from the moment she'd commandeered the flowers, made no move to help. They simply stared, lips curling, eyes bright with vicious delight. The Grand Princess's gaze fell on the shattered sacred lotus on the floor, and her face went dark with fury. Rosalie lay there, alabaster skin streaked with crimson, her bare limbs tangled in shameless display. Every man in the garden stood transfixed. By morning, her ruin would be the talk of every tea house, every brothel, every gambling den in the capital. Then I watched her eyes flicker. She saw the men staring. She saw the crown prince frozen on the steps. And like a drowning woman lunging for a piece of driftwood, she did the unthinkable. She spread her arms wide, bared her snow-white skin, tilted her head back so that every scratch on her throat and shoulders caught the light. "Your Highness, Crown Prince," she sobbed, "Rosalie is innocent. That beast did this to me. I cannot bear to show my face anymore. Please." The Crown Prince's face twisted in disgust. But before the public gaze, he couldn't pretend not to see. He bellowed with thunderous rage, "Where are the Choi family attendants? How could they leave their young mistress lying on the ground in such disgrace?" But Rosalie had deliberately dismissed her maids before venturing out, forced to step forward herself. I made a show of fumbling with the clasp of my outer robe, pretending. Stalling. Just as I expected, Rosalie shoved me aside and tugged at the Crown Prince's sleeve with wounded pride. I called for her, but she completely ignored me. She wailed. "What else can I expect from a sister who'd stand by and watch me humiliated? And the others? They're all bullying me. Your Highness, you are all I have left." The Crown Prince, eager to extricate himself from this mess, rebuked me coldly. "Lady Choi II, how could you be so heartless and cruel to your own sister? Why aren't you attending to your elder sister's washing and dressing?" When the Crown Prince gave the order, I had no choice but to comply. But Rosalie grew flustered. She let out a startled little cry and stumbled, falling directly into the Crown Prince's arms, her bare body pressing against him for the entire public to witness. I saw the muscle jump in his jaw. I saw the ashen disgust flash across his face. He glared at me in irritation, clearly expecting me to pull Rosalie away. But I made myself look small, timid. Far too frightened to dare intervene in a Crown Prince's affairs. His teeth clenched audibly. With a sharp gesture, he yanked his outer cloak from his shoulders and threw it across her. Then he stepped back, as far back as he could without being obvious. Rosalie didn't notice. She was too busy shooting Valentina a look of triumph. I was just standing here, she sobbed, minding my own business, and Lady Valentina's cat attacked me for no reason. "Valentina, I know you despise me, but how could you, as a fellow woman, do this to me? Must you drive me to my grave to be satisfied?" The accusation rippled through the court. All eyes turned to Valentina with suspicion. Everyone knew the two were competing for the position of Crown Princess. Valentina was no fool. She caught on immediately. "You framed me," she breathed. The Grand Princess let out a cold laugh. "Lady Choi II, I know Valentina's character better than anyone. Did you consider the consequences before daring to set her up?" Rosalie sobbed uncontrollably. "Your Highness, what decent maiden would ruin her own reputation to frame someone? Valentina, as the future Crown Princess and mother of the nation, how could you be so vicious and heartless?" The whispers shifted instantly. Indeed, what woman would sacrifice her virtue to harm others? Perhaps Lady Valentina truly did this. With such character, how could she become Crown Princess? Valentina turned pale and confronted her. "You moved those flowers deliberately to provoke my cat. This was all a calculated act, wasn't it?" Rosalie froze, caught off guard by how accurate the accusation was. "You're the one who framed me without proof. Don't you dare shift the blame onto me." Valentina's gaze swung to me. "Lady Choi, you've been by Rosalie's side this whole time. Before all these witnesses, will you testify for me?" This was the moment. I had come back from death for this moment. I parted my lips. And just then, a guard sprinted into the pavilion and whispered something into the crown prince's ear. I watched the crown prince's face change. In an instant, the impatience vanished, replaced by something sharp, something calculating. He drew his sword and ran the cat through. Valentina, he snarled, you've gone too far this time. Apologize to Rosalie now. Valentina staggered back as if she'd been struck. This is absurd. She's the one trying to harm me. Why should I apologize? His gaze swung to me, hard cold. Lady Choi, with His Highness Her Royal Highness, and myself standing witness, speak the truth without fear. What exactly do you know? And then I understood. That whisper, that guard. The news he had just received. The Chief Justice and the Imperial Censor had returned to the capital from the investigation in Tanzhou. My father had been cleared, reinstated, his powerful backing restored. Which meant Rosalie was, once again, a viable candidate for the Eastern Palace. The Crown Prince had just shifted his entire allegiance, in the space of the single sentence. Rosalie smiled. A slow, vicious, triumphant smile, murder gleaming behind her eyes. My lips parted, but no sound came out. The Crown Prince scoffed in disgust. Lady Valentina, we never imagined you could be so petty. Did you truly believe tarnishing Rosalie's reputation would make her undesirable? You've misjudged us. We value those with noble character. His gaze flicked to me. And as for you, Lady Choi II, birthright means nothing, but your venomous heart truly sickens me. He swept Rosalie into his arms and strode out of the pavilion, ignoring Valentina's demands to involve the authorities, showing no deference to the Grand Princess herself. Valentina stood shattered, swaying as if the ground had vanished beneath her. I reached out to steady her. Marina shoved me away. Who needs your fake sympathy? You're just like your sister. It was clearly Rosalie who framed Valentina, and you stayed silent. But Valentina, though disappointed, didn't give me a hard time. She caught my wrist before I could retreat. You're both from the Choi family. I know you're in a difficult position. Just go. Just then, Rosalie sent a servant to fetch me. I leaned close to Valentina, my voice barely a breath. Tanzhou, I whispered. Only those who live inside the minister's residence truly know what filth lies beneath its polished surface. Then I turned and walked away. 5 years ago, my father was still a fifth-rank palace clerk. Unremarkable, underpaid, forgotten. Then his superior, Vice Minister Li, was assigned to oversee the construction of the Tanzhou Dam. A year later, the dam collapsed. Thousands of villagers drowned. The reported stone embankments turned out to be little more than woven straw sacks, falling apart at the first kiss of water. Vice Minister Li was convicted of embezzlement and executed. But here's the thing. Li had lived in poverty. He frequently gave alms to the needy. When his home was raided, not even 100 taels of silver were found. How could such a man, who aided the poor with his own meager savings, be the very vermin who defrauded the people with shoddy substitutes? But corpses don't speak. And around that same time, the Choi family suddenly grew very, very rich. My father was promoted to Vice Minister of Works, then Minister, then Untouchable. From that day forward, Rosalie strutted through the capital like she owned it. Getting rid of her was never going to be simple. But there's an old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The moment I returned to the mansion, I was seized and slapped twice across the face. My stepmother stood before me, trembling with rage. You worthless wench. How dare you stand idle while Rosalie suffered at the banquet? My father's face darkened as he smashed a teacup at my feet. Porcelain shrapnel scattered across the polished floor. When one thrives, all thrive. When one falls, all fall. Do you truly believe your sister's tarnished reputation and marriage prospects won't reflect on yours? Behind him, Rosalie stood timidly in fresh new robes, the picture of innocent suffering. It's only natural, she said sweetly, for a younger sister, especially a concubine's daughter, to feel envious of me. Given her recent misconduct that so offended the crown prince, she's clearly unfit for any advantageous match. I hear Censor Chen of the Justice Bureau is seeking a second wife. Becoming the legal wife of a 7th-rank official would be a tremendous blessing. Why not arrange this splendid union for her, father? It would also ease the crown prince's burdens. Sweet little Rosalie, always thinking of others. She had devised a scheme to curry favor with the crown prince and torment me, all in one breath. Censor Chen was over 60 years old. He had beaten his first wife to death. He had a notorious reputation for cruelty, whether toward prisoners or the women in his household. He resorted to beatings at the slightest provocation. No respectable family in the capital would marry their daughter to him. That was the splendid union she had picked out for me. I suppressed a mocking smile. Sister, your reputation may be a touch tarnished, I said softly. But isn't becoming the crown princess worth the scandal? If I had protected you, how would His Highness have played the gallant hero? I was clearly doing you a favor. My father went purple with fury. Preposterous. No woman can become crown princess with a ruined reputation. Never mind crown princess. The ministers would never tolerate a disgraced royal consort. Rosalie shot me a venomous glare, her guilt thinly veiled. Then, for reasons unknown, she lifted her chin with renewed contempt. As sisters, you failed to shield me in my disheveled state. That's proof enough of your malice. Whatever I do to you now, you've brought upon yourself. In my past life, when I draped my coat over her shoulders, she had called me a meddler and wished me dead. This lifetime, I stopped interfering and was branded wicked-hearted. Truly, the wicked have their own twisted logic. My father looked at me and said with cold disappointment, Alicia, I once thought you were obedient, but never imagined you could be this foolish and heartless. Since that's the case, don't blame your father for being merciless. Rosalie shot me a triumphant glance, as if convinced I was nothing but dirt beneath her feet, eternally destined to be her stepping stone. But then my father added, however, Rosalie, your willingness to share the crown prince's burdens is commendable. But refrain from acting on this matter, or even mentioning it to His Highness. I have my own plans. Rosalie wouldn't have it. Why shouldn't I? I must prove myself as His Highness's worthy partner. If I don't speak up, what if Valentina steals the initiative? My father couldn't sway her and was about to relent. The next moment, the city prefect arrived unannounced, and dispensing with formalities, directly questioned Rosalie in front of my father. The Marquis of Yawning has brought his daughter to file charges against you at the magistrate's office. He claims you framed her at the princess's flower viewing banquet, tarnished her reputation, and caused the death of her beloved pet, valued at 3,000 taels. Is this true? Rosalie went white. She had clearly never anticipated Valentina would take legal action. After all, she believed Valentina loved the crown prince just as deeply and would never put him in a difficult position. Yet, after escorting her home, the crown prince had visited Valentina at the Marquis's estate, presenting priceless southern pearls to appease her, even promising to make her his principal consort. The lawsuit had his quiet blessing. To him, this was merely petty jealousy between women, hardly worth mentioning. He subconsciously treated Rosalie as a concubine already. After much persuasion and a hefty bribe of 5,000 taels, the magistrate finally relented, agreeing to pin the blame on some random scapegoat at the flower banquet to avoid offending either party. Rosalie was brimming with smug satisfaction, convinced happiness was within her grasp. But her father flew into a rage and slapped her across the face. "I bled for years to bury Tanjo," he hissed. "I bled to secure your position as crown princess. How could you be so foolish to ruin your own reputation? Even if the crown prince still desires you, he can never make you his principal consort now." Blood trickled from Rosalie's split lip, yet she clenched her teeth in defiance. "The crown prince holds me dear in his heart. He'll override all objections to choose me as his rightful bride." Override all objections? What nonsense are you dreaming about? Do you really think you can pick up a fallen garment and pretend it's still clean? Yes, the crown prince and I grew up together. He must still have feelings for me, she muttered with feigned confidence. But I knew she was already regretting it. After all, with the Minister of Justice arriving in the capital, her father had regained his former glory. But the moment she decided to disrobe herself, there was truly no turning back. The next day, portraits of the banquet beauty took the capital by storm. Rosalie's elegance became the talk of every street, brothel, and pleasure house. Some of the more, shall we say, creative editions depicted women, completely nude, striking suggestive poses, every last one bearing Rosalie's face. Within 48 hours, every man in the capital knew exactly what Rosalie's body looked like. She stormed into my chambers with an entourage in tow, eyes wild. "Was this your doing?" "Sister, I'm utterly bewildered. Father said if your reputation is ruined, I'll suffer the consequences too. How could I dare do such a thing?" She kicked my embroidery frame across the room. "What more could possibly happen to you? Father's already promised you to Magistrate Chen from the Justice Department. I've ruined your life, so now you won't let me have any peace." Her eyes narrowed. "So, it was you. You're the one who told that Valentina how the herbs in my sachet would drive beasts wild when mixed with the 9-colored sacred lotus's fragrance." I couldn't help but ask, "If that's the case, dear sister, why blame me for not lending you my cloak?" She let out a cold laugh. "How I choose to act is my own affair. If you won't side with me, you're nothing but spiteful. After all the times I've brought you, a mere bastard daughter, along with me everywhere." Then her tone shifted abruptly. Her eyes gleamed. "The Crown Princess Consort selection approaches. We're family, real sisters. Haven't you always stood by me, shielding me from every trouble? Please, help me this time too, won't you?" Indeed, I was but a concubine's daughter, without even a favored mother to rely on. To survive decently, I had to exhaust every means to please the legal wife and her daughter. Yet no matter how much I sacrificed for them, they never treated me as human. Rosalie's eyes glittered with something between desperation and sadism. To bury one scandal, she purred, we must create a greater one. Sister, if I circulate intimate drawings of you with a beggar, wrap you in burial cloth, and have father strike your name from the family register, wouldn't that save me? My fists clenched so tight they trembled. My nails dug bloody crescents into my palms. None of this could salvage her reputation. She just wanted to see me suffer worse than she had. Someone help second young Miss undress, at once. I stared at Rosalie's smug face, and despair came crashing down like a tidal wave. Just as the servants reached to tear at my garments. The Grand Princess has arrived. The Grand Princess, supported by Valentina, took her seat at the head of the hall. The sister of the current emperor, a woman with her own fiefdom, her own council of advisors, her own private guard, beloved by His Majesty above all others. She did not bow. She did not accept tea. The 9-colored sacred lotus, bestowed upon me by His Majesty, was destroyed by 2 young ladies from your household. If I recall correctly, it was your second daughter who removed it from the pavilion. We couldn't afford to offend the Grand Princess. My father had only just regained his official position. Without hesitation, he threw me under the bus. Rosalie has always been sensible. She's innocent in this matter. Since Alicia is at fault, let your highness decide her punishment. The Grand Princess glanced at me and arched an eyebrow. Are you certain you wish to leave this matter to my discretion, Minister? My father remained composed. Punishment follows wrongdoing. This is the natural order. I speak nothing but the truth. The Grand Princess repeatedly murmured her approval. Just as I was about to follow her out, Rosalie rushed forward in panic. Your Highness, my younger sister has indeed erred, but she acted in a moment of folly. For the sake of our family's long-standing service to the ministry, might your Highness show her mercy? The Grand Princess looked genuinely startled. I merely responded with a cold laugh. Just as expected, Rosalie spoke the next moment. Her life may be spared, but punishment she must endure. I've already ordered her tongue removed to teach her proper conduct. Does this satisfy your Highness? The Grand Princess frowned. Even Valentina was staring at me in disbelief. Rosalie hadn't done this for my sake. She had done it to silence me, to make sure I could never testify against her. Ever. The Grand Princess remarked coldly, such cruelty at such a tender age. Truly, my lord, you have raised an exemplary daughter. She then ordered her guards to escort me away in a grand procession. I laughed under my breath. Rosalie turned ashen, likely realizing that the Grand Princess taking me away meant certain death. You wretch, I'll be watching you die. It's you who's about to die. The moment I entered the princess's residence, attendants untied me and served tea. Lady Chai II, I trust I have not arrived too late. That day, Valentina had taken my mention of Tanjo to heart. The Grand Princess, close to Valentina, naturally held a special place in my thoughts. As I'd anticipated, a princess with her own fiefdom and advisors was no ordinary noble. Meeting the Grand Princess's meaningful gaze, I bowed deeply in reverence. For the Eastern Palace selection, Alicia shall prove worthy of your Highness's expectations. I left the princess's residence and plunged into the lotus pond. When I emerged, I was a complete mess. Hair like a wet tangle, robe streaked with mud. Valentina let out a sigh. Why must you torment yourself like this? If I return unharmed, Rosalie will have my head. The Marquis of Yongning had earned his title through military exploits, and Valentina had inherited her father's unconstrained warrior spirit and blunt honesty. She clutched my hand tightly, eyes filled with painful concern. Had you not warned me at the flower banquet, I'd still be branded as that venomous woman. Your current suffering, it's all because of me. No matter what happens in the future, I'll always protect you. I smiled faintly, overwhelmed with gratitude. But deep down I knew, in this world, we can only save ourselves. Back at the mansion, Rosalie came looking for trouble as expected. But my fever raged on, leaving me bedridden. Rosalie, deeming me ill-omened, threatened to cut off my medicine and cast me out to fend for myself. The matriarch stopped her. Don't you wish to share the crown prince's burdens? Rosalie snorted coldly. True enough, no woman would willingly become Lord Chen's second wife. If I can ease the crown prince's burdens, he'll surely cherish me all the more. She waved her hand dismissively. Enough. Let her live. On the day of the consort selection, Lord Chen will be present. We'll simply arrange their happy union then. The crown prince loves me, and I care for him just as deeply. How dare that Valentina try to steal him from me? I'll make sure she's utterly humiliated." My stepmother frowned. "Your father said we shouldn't bring this up now, especially not on the day of the consort selection." "Rosalie, don't be foolish." Rosalie responded with an irritated grunt. "Mother, rest assured, I won't act rashly." Yet, seeing the urgency in her eyes, I knew she was bound to make a foolish mistake. Soon came the day of the Eastern Palace's consort selection. As I lay ill in bed, Rosalie barged in wearing lavish robes, her voice dripping with malice. "Today's my joyous occasion, and yours too, dear sister. Why aren't you up preparing yourself?" My maidservant's eyes welled up with tears. "Miss, the master still favors you since he's permitting you to join the imperial selection. Seize this chance. Becoming a royal consort would secure your future prosperity." A smile tugged at my lips. "Indeed, good times." Rosalie shot me a scornful look, mocking my pipe dreams. I laughed at her own cleverness, about to backfire. At the Eastern Palace gates, Valentina and Marina happened to alight from their carriage just as Rosalie's arrived. The moment Marina spotted her, she stifled a laugh behind her hand. "Well, if it isn't the belle of the banquet portraits. How dare you show your face at the Eastern Palace today?" The other noble ladies burst into mocking laughter. Rosalie flushed crimson with rage. "The crown prince holds me dear in his heart. That's why he personally invited me to the selection. Just wait until I become his consort. You wretched creatures will pay for this." The crowd exchanged glances before bursting into uncontrollable laughter again. At this moment, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for Rosalie. The crown prince had summoned her to the selection. That much was true. But he'd never bestow the position of crown princess upon one with such a tarnished reputation. Just as I predicted, the crown prince handed the golden comb to Valentina. Rosalie received nothing but a bronze comb. "Brother crown prince, didn't you claim to love me and promise to make me your principal consort? How could I merely become a concubine?" Before the crown prince could respond, the Empress Dowager interjected coldly. "Given your tarnished reputation, the crown prince's decision to admit you into the Eastern Palace is already an act of grace. Shouldn't you be expressing gratitude?" Rosalie tugged at the crown prince's sleeve. "But you promised never to scorn me, that you valued my noble character. Why make me merely a concubine?" The prince knitted his brows in irritation. Yet, needing the minister's support, he sighed reluctantly. "I care not for empty titles, but the censure of the realm is beyond my control. For this, you must endure hardship." Rosalie trembled with rage as Valentina stood there holding the golden comb. Her face twisted in mockery. And what about her reputation? At the flower banquet, she framed me and ruined my name. How could someone so vicious ever become the crown princess? The Empress Dowager frowned. "Valentini as gentle-natured, generous, and sensible. Don't you dare slander her. I'll let this slide considering your youth. Besides..." The Empress Dowager lifted her gaze, her smile laced with contempt. "Exposing yourself in public, even if you're innocent. What good does that do? Rosalie, were you a man, it might be excusable. But as a woman, your sole worth lies in serving your husband and raising children. Reputation outweighs all. No decent man would wed a woman with tarnished virtue, let alone the crown prince." The Empress Dowager paused, her smile laced with scrutiny. "If you show no concern yourself, others might still hold you in some regard. But search your conscience. Can you truly face this with equanimity?" Without a doubt, Rosalie couldn't. She had dared to trade her reputation for the crown princess title, yet couldn't bear the consequences, dragging others down with her. "Attendants, this queen is weary. Prepare my palanquin for the return to the palace." Rosalie bit her lower lip so hard that faint traces of blood appeared, her eyes brimming with remorse. Had she chosen to repent at this moment, she might still have saved her life. Yet she straightened her back defiantly, resentment written across her face. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager hails from Valentina's family, so naturally she speaks in Valentina's favor. But selecting the crown princess isn't merely a family matter. It's an affair of state. For the Empress Dowager to show such partiality is hardly fair. The hall fell deathly silent. The noble ladies bowed their heads, lower than one another. The Empress Dowager smiled. Favoritism. Do you truly believe I'm unaware of your schemes during the flower banquet? Rosalie, look at this. Doesn't it seem familiar? The discarded sachet had somehow reappeared on the sandalwood table. Beads of cold sweat formed on Rosalie's forehead, yet she spoke with defiant confidence. This is my sachet, lost for quite some time. How did it end up in your Majesty's possession? The Empress Dowager studied her, as if observing some curious artifact. What a silver tongue you have! Since you admit this sachet is yours, the ninefold nettle inside must surely be your doing as well. The royal physician confirmed that when ninefold nettle mingles with the scent of nine-colored sacred lotus, it drives beasts mad. Rosalie, do you confess your crime? Rosalie's repeated demands for me to bring the nine-colored sacred lotus that day became irrefutable proof of her crimes. If Rosalie still clung to hope moments ago, she was now completely panicked. Your Majesty, I swear this has nothing to do with May. This sachet was given by my half-sister Alicia, and she was the one who insisted on placing the nine-colored sacred lotus before me. Truly, I'm innocent. She dug her fingers into my arm. Sister, dear sister, quickly tell them the sachet is yours. The flowers were your doing, too. None of this has anything to do with me. Now. Then she lowered her head, whispering words only we could hear. Alicia, just agree to help me through this, and I won't force you into that remarriage. I'll even find you a proper match. But refuse and I'll make your life a living hell. The absurdity nearly made me laugh aloud. Even now, she still failed to grasp the gravity of the situation. Dear sister, I whispered, it's you who'll soon be wishing for death. Rosalie burned with rage and moved to strike me. The palace guards restrained her. Seeing the Empress Dowager's livid face, Rosalie desperately reached for the crown prince. Brother, I'm innocent. You must believe me. The crown prince brushed off his sleeve in disgust. Rosalie, it's not that I won't help you, but your actions went too far. If you're willing to become a concubine, I'll plead with Her Majesty to spare your life. I'll also convince Valentina to forgive you. This had been part of the crown prince's long-standing scheme. He would wed Valentina, who commanded military power, as his principal consort, while taking his mentor's daughter and the Minister of Revenue's daughter as secondary consorts. All that remained for Rosalie was the lowly position of concubine. Rosalie finally realized the crown prince had never loved her. And in her panic, she spoke without thinking. My dear crown prince, my heart belongs only to you. You mustn't betray my devotion. You've invited Censor Chen multiple times, yet he keeps putting on airs. Brother, if you wish to win him over, I can help. Isn't he seeking a new wife? I found the perfect match. She's right here. The court froze. Though Censor Chen held only the 7th rank position of investigating censor, his actual influence far exceeded his official status. The crown prince had been secretly courting him for months in an attempt to overturn a particular court verdict. Had this happened in private, the crown prince might have praised her thoughtfulness. But in public, Rosalie's move was essentially throwing the crown prince under the bus. True enough, the crown prince couldn't contain his rage and slapped Rosalie across the face. You foolish woman, what nonsense are you spouting? When my father and his official wife arrived, the imperial envoy was already there. He contemptuously tossed aside the gold ingots my father had offered. Your daughter's words have reached His Majesty's ears. The Emperor has ordered this humble servant to escort Miss Rosalie to the palace. I beg your lordship not to make this difficult for me. The official wife clung to my father's arm, sobbing uncontrollably. My lord, Rosalie may have offended the Emperor. You, her father, you must save her. My father let out a thoughtful hum and cupped his hands toward the chief eunuch. My daughter is frightened and not in her right mind. Might I accompany her into the palace? The eunuch's smile didn't reach his eyes. No need for haste, my lord, His Majesty has summoned you to court as well. Dad, I'll be fine as long as you're here, right? Rosalie tugged at my father's sleeve and blurted out excitedly, completely oblivious to his ashen face. After the Grand Eunuch left, the noisy Eastern Palace fell silent in an instant. Through the crowd, Valentina flashed me a smile. Neither Rosalie nor my father returned by nightfall. The matriarch paced anxiously around the manor, oblivious that I'd already smuggled out my packed belongings. At dawn the next day, constables kicked open the manor gates. The entire household was thrown into prison. All except me, the one who turned against my own flesh and blood, by exposing my father's embezzlement of relief funds. His substitution of shoddy goods, his framing of colleagues. When I visited Rosalie in prison, Valentina and Marina happened to be leaving. I hid behind a pillar, watching them walk arm in arm toward an ornate carriage. The lantern bore the unmistakable crest of the Grand Princess's estate. In the dim prison cell, Rosalie had lost all traces of her former grace. Upon seeing me, she lunged wildly, clawing at me like a madwoman. You vile wretch. This is all you're doing. My father also berated me harshly. You ungrateful wretch. Do you think you'll fare better with our family ruined? Without us, you're nothing but worthless scum. I looked down at them with contempt. Do you even realize where you went wrong? My father scoffed coldly. My only mistake was giving birth to this worthless scum. Rosalie had been glaring at me, but suddenly lowered her head in confusion. I gripped her chin, forcing her to look up. Let me tell you your mistake. Some garments, once discarded, can never be worn again. Then I turned to my father. And you too, father. The moment you stripped off your official robes in Tanjo for personal gain, you forfeited the right to wear any honorable garment ever again. With that, I walked away without looking back. No matter how vehemently the curses followed me, the moment I stepped out of Shoyu prison, I shouldered my hidden pack, found a swift horse, and galloped straight for the city gates. The rippling sunset light fell upon my coarse linen robe. At last, the relief of having narrowly escaped death welled up in my heart. With a deep, carefree sigh, I spurred my horse through the forest, reveling in unbridled freedom, without a single glance back. And that's where her story ends, at the edge of a forest, with the sun setting behind her, and an entire chapter of her life finally, mercifully, in ashes. But it's also where the next one begins. Because a woman who has died once and clawed her way back to the living, a woman who has outsmarted ministers and princes and an empress dowager, a woman who has watched her enemies fall by their own hand, she doesn't disappear into a quiet life. She becomes something else entirely. If you made it this far, thank you, truly. I know it wasn't a short ride, and the fact that you stayed with me through every twist means the world. If this story hit you the way it hit me the first time I read it, do me a quick favor. Tap that like button. It really does help more than you'd think. Drop a comment and tell me, did Alicia handle it right? Was Rosalie's ending fair? Would you have shown her any mercy at all? I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, Rebirth, Revenge, Court Intrigue, Women who refuse to stay buried, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because there's a whole lot more coming. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And until next time, stay sharp, stay free, and never let anyone tell you that kindness is owed to people who don't deserve it. I'll see you in the next one.